Hi there, welcome to my channel. If you're new, I am Christy. I have a homestead slash flower farm in northern Alberta, Canada. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing in my greenhouse in preparation for the coming growing season. So one of the things that I do on my property here is I use flower farming as a way to be sustainable on my property so that I can grow my own food. And essentially the goal is always to grow my own food for free so that it doesn't cost me money. But today we're going to talk about some of the things that I discovered this year and what I'm doing to fix them. I made a big mess on my flower farm last year, and because I am still learning, and basically the gardening industry, so much has changed and so much more information is available that is scientifically backed, based. Research has been done. There's lots of things that a person now knows about that wasn't even thought about or talked about 5-10 years ago. And so I was going to share some of the things that I have run into here on my property. I had rototilled. Now, that's the way it's done up here. Where I am in northern Alberta, we are usually, our ground is frozen usually 6 months of the year. So even if I wanted to go out into the garden and start digging while there's snow on the ground, it's not going to happen, because usually, you know, in January, February, March, even sometimes can get that late. Sometimes we're looking at having weeks on end of negative 40 degrees Celsius days and even cooler nights. The last few years, we've had a lot of really bad wind chills. Now, a wind chill is, you know, it doesn't really affect the ambient temperature, but that wind chill, if it's blowing across your perennial beds, it can really penetrate into your soils, especially if there's any traffic, walking, animals walking, or if the snow has blown away or your mulch has blown away, your beds can easily freeze. It can easily freeze very, very hard. And so usually here in our climate, we are like our frost line, when we actually dig water lines in, it has to be like 8 feet below the surface, because it will freeze that far down. I never thought about anaerobic or anaerobic. It's something that we don't think about in my climate, because one, we're really hard pan, we're clay. It's very, 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 very clay based. And secondly, we're frozen 6 months of the year. So everything is, there's no fluffiness to anything here. It's all compaction. Everything is compaction. And so it's very safe to say that everything is very anaerobic in our soil and in our garden beds. And I started to realize this last year when I was growing some things in places where I shouldn't have had an issue, but I started to learn different conditions or diseases were showing up on my plants, and just different pests were showing up on my plants based on what I've been researching. And I don't want to quote anything because I'm still researching and learning, but I started to connect the dots that what was happening within the soil was affecting my plants, and likely it was the bacteria. So I started to really learn when we are tilling our soil, it actually harms our structure of our soil. And I also learned last year, like in the spring last year, when I was planting in my garden, we had really record-breaking temperatures here in our climate for the last couple of years. And the earthworms were dead. There was lots of earthworms in my garden, but they were like mummified. Like they were hard and dried out. And my soil was fluffy, but it was dead. Everything in it was dead. And, you know, this is after I hauled in a lot of compost. This was after, you know, I had been watering on my garden. It wasn't holding water. There was no fungi in the soil to make the aggregate needed for the bacteria to thrive. And so it was a very big learning experience. I had lots of plants that did amazing, and I had some that were pretty easy to grow that would not grow at all. And so it really made me stop and think, I need to do better. You know, I need to do better. I need to take care of my soil, and I need to learn what can I apply here in my climate that is going to help me have more production and is going to prevent my soil from being so compacted and break up some of these clays. And the answer to that was fungi. Or fungi. We call it fungi here, and everyone else calls it fungi. And then anyway, different countries, different regions, we all say different things. Anyway, but the bottom line is that if your soil isn't functioning, your shit ain't gonna grow the way to its maximum potential. I don't care who you are. You can argue with me all day long. It's just not gonna happen. Yes, you can force bulbs and force things to grow and make things grow, but there's always the pest pressure. I did do a lot of research, and I do know that when it comes to disease, plants that have a strong immune system, they don't get sick. They don't get affected by the disease, just like what we went through with, you know, the shutdowns here. With the shutdowns here, those that had built their immune system, they weren't affected as much as those that were autoimmune or immune compromised. And I know from this firsthand because I am someone who has been working for years on building my immune system after being immune compromised. There's other people like me who actually take micro doses of chemotherapy instead of going the holistic way on lifestyle change and diet. They have gone the direction of medication, which is the equivalency of just spraying your plant with pesticides or herbicides. And I just didn't want to go that direction with my own health. So I can't expect to grow food drenched in chemical and still maintain the lifestyle that I'm choosing to by healing myself with the life I'm living. And so it's kind of like, how do you function in a dysfunctional space? Well, you start putting work and intention towards cultivating the remedy or the resolution. And so this is not going to be a fix all right now, but it's going to be steps towards a better aggregate in my soil, better moisture retention, more plant available nutrients that are naturally occurring, less inputs of chemical or fertilizers, more of just kind of going a little bit back to basics, allowing nature to be nature and not pour, dump gallons and gallons of human contamination on it, of all the toxins and stuff that we do end up using. So some of the things that I'm going to be working on in my greenhouse, and I'm going to take you with me and show you, but one of the things I learned is that it's really good for you to have soil structure where you have perennial plants growing alongside of your annuals, especially on a flower farm. Well, that is not really practical considering our farm or our property is frozen 6 months out of the year solid. Even inside of a greenhouse, it will freeze solid. You're not getting a shovel in there. You're not pounding a stake in there. You couldn't even get a toothpick in the ground. It's frozen. I mean, when it's -40 for weeks on end, you're not going to get anything in the ground. So to me, it's like, well, how is this going to be functional? But I have to try, I have to try. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of my daffodils, and I'm going to plant them because daffodils are planted like 6 inches below the ground, and then you add mulch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to perennialize daffodils in my greenhouse because I can plant around them and over top of them with other crops, and the daffodils will be there all year long. And like every year they'll just continue and they'll multiply, and I'll have an early crop of daffodils, hopefully a Mother's Day crop of daffodils that'll be growing inside of my greenhouse. And that will be one of the perennials that I'm using. I also have a few other perennials I'd like to put in there as direct sow. I'd like to try doing some lupins. However, the lupins, they have a different pH. So I don't know. I think my pH is more on the acidic side in certain areas in my greenhouse, simply because I had made a fertilizer that I poured on my garden that worked great for brassicas, but killed everything else. And I think it's the pH is really kind of, it is more suited for something like a lupin. But lupins also they're like a pea. They create those nodules of, like the nodules on the root system. They create a nitrogen, which is a nitrogen fixer. So if I use them as cut flowers and I cut them back and then they end up dying back, then those nutrients are available to the other plants. So I kind of wanted to companion plant those into my space naturally. I am wanting to install some red wigglers in my farm, like as a worm farm, so I can use stuff. But I did buy some worm castings. You can't get worm castings in town. I could go to Peace River, but they put everything away in warehouses and they won't go and get them for you. So I have to order online. But I am hoping to do a trip to, there's a really big worm farm facility that is in Nisku, which is a few hours away. And I'm hoping to go there and buy myself some red wigglers to start my own little farm, just a couple hundred, just to learn how to begin farming with red wigglers so I can use that and make compost tea, like worm casting tea, to add into my irrigation systems here on the farm that we'll be setting up in the spring. I do have an irrigation system. I just haven't set it up. And so we're going to get to that. My watering system, the biggest, oh my God, you guys, this broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. So we have dugout water, and to me, like, I don't know, I guess because we're so frozen all the time, and I knew about anaerobic and aerobic bacterias. I knew about it somewhat, but I never really paid attention because I just see other people doing stuff in my area and it's like, well, that's working for them. But, you know, they also still have to use chemicals. They also still have to use fertilizers, whether it's organic composted fertilizers or they buy synthetic. I just kind of doing what it's done in our area. Like, nobody does regenerative here except for the Hutterite colony, which they do. And I tell you, they're amazing. They have a lot going on over there. They're really, really, really inspirational to a lot of people, and they should really take note of how they do stuff. Because they do actually do a lot of regenerative practices, including worm teas. It's really incredible. And you can go buy cabbage from them that has nothing for a spot on it, and they don't use chemical. And it's because they use worm casting tea. It's really a phenomenal product that they make that's all natural. So there is that. But other than that, there's really not a lot of regenerative agriculture in our area. In fact, if you start talking about it, they accuse you of witchcraft. And that's a true story because I get accused of it all the time. People say, oh, you're a witch. Oh, you're doing this. And it's like, okay, I will, whatever. I don't even know. Like, so one of the things that really broke my heart, I was devastated to clue in of what was happening. Now our horses drink out of a dugout, but we have a different dugout that our shop and barn area is hooked up to that is separate from our house. So our house is on town water, which, you know, it's chlorinated. And then our shop and barn area are hooked up to a dugout that's separate from the one that the horses drink from in their pasture. So what happened is we had a fire here a couple years ago. And what happened is there was a chopper dipped in that dugout. And when they pulled out, the float, like the intake for our shop water, got scooped up somehow or broke off the float, and it ended up floating to the bottom. Like the intake was now sucking off of the bottom of the dugout. And we never thought, because we don't use it very often, it was really stinky, like really, really stinky and really dirty. But we were filling waters, and I was using it in my garden because typically it's like a compost tea, right? So it's really good garden. I thought it was good for the garden, being a dugout and whatnot. So in the spring, everything flourished with it. It did great. Because the ice come off and the water turned, and there was lots of oxygen in the water, and the plants thrived on that dugout water. As the summer went on, it got a cover of duckweed, and we never went in there and fixed. We had no access to get in there because it's fenced off with bison fence from somebody bought the property since we bought this property. And so we don't have access to just go there whenever we want to fix our water. We have to like arrange it, and we just haven't had a chance to do that. Nor were we wanting to. We were planning to abandon that and set up something different so we didn't have to work with the neighbors on that project, just because nobody has time, right? Like, it's better just for us to do our own thing. So long story short, the dugout got covered with duckweed, which meant there was no wind, and it's in a bush, surrounded by bush, so there was no wind breaking the surface of that dugout. It was just a pond with the suction hose on the bottom of the dugout in the mud. And I wasn't really paying attention. Like, I was watering the horses. I was letting chlorinated water, township water, to water our livestock because they don't want people using it for livestock. It's just for human consumption. And so I was breaking the rules, and I was letting it sit out, leaving the chlorine behind, and watering them with that. But Chaz I didn't tell him. And so he was just filling out of the shop water into the horse pen. And I didn't check. Tyson didn't check. We didn't think about it. No one thought about it. And then Monty, my one horse, started to get lame. And the other one started to get lame, and they were both the ones that were off the grass were getting lame. And it was very odd because there was no reason for it. Turns out it was, what it turned out to be was I started to feed them a supplement, which was a herbal remedy for a bacterial, so it would be like a herbal horse remedy for like a bacterial issue within a horse's gut or whatnot. And so I started to give them herbs and treatment of that, and they did really good. So I had to figure out, where's this bacteria conflict coming from? Was it the feed? And lots of times you'll send feed in to get tested to see, oh, hey, is there a bacterial issue? Is there some salmonella or whatever, right? In certain situations, or botulism or whatever. I don't think horses are bothered by that, but same kind of concept. You would get it tested. And everything they were getting was fine. So the only thing left was the water. And then I realized it's anaerobic. And I was watering my garden, my greenhouse, all my plants, everything was getting anaerobic water. And it still hadn't quite registered, right? Like, it's dugout water, right? Like, everybody uses it here. Everybody does it to their property. That's water you put on your garden. That's good stuff, right? Like, that's the mentality people have. They don't think about it being bad. You don't think about that, all the stuff that's in the bottom of the dugout, all of that sediment, all the minerals and the decaying things is basically a compost in this slew of water. And you wouldn't think that it would be really harmful for your plants, but it is. And so I've been putting bad things on my soil and making my plants really, really struggle because I've been a bad steward of the land. I have not been educated. I had not had the knowledge. I watched YouTube videos, and I took information that was quick and easy and free, and all of these garden hacks that I had been tuning into, and it screwed up my business. It screwed up my home garden. I mean, I still did it phenomenally well. However, I could have done better, and I feel awful knowing that if I dig around in my garden, all you're gonna find is a whole bunch of dead earthworms, because the life in there is just not supporting. There's no support in there. I did rototill, and it was the last time. I'm not rototilling in there again. It's really hard to break people's mentality. I mean, even in our own household, Tyson's like, rototill, and I'm like, no. But it's education, you know, it's learning, being okay with saying, I didn't know, and I'm gonna fix this. Or, you know, I made a big mistake. I should know better now for next time. Be willing to shift and change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant some perennials. I'm going to start amending what I'm planting with worm castings. I am mulching deeply with some leaves that I raked up. And trust me, I know that it is not going to be perfect. I do need to learn how to make compost properly. I did haul in a whole bunch of horse manure, and a lot of the horse manure, it heated up so much that some of the spots in there was like, it was like charred almost, because it didn't get turned soon enough. So there's probably not a lot of bacteria in there. It killed everything out. So it's like just a volume. So what I got to do now is I have the soil in there, or the dirt. It's not soil, it's dirt with no life. What I need to do is I need to make a bunch of compost teas and go get some leaf mold and a fish bubbler, because I couldn't find one in town. And I need to start making teas and inoculate the soil with the microbiology, and that'll be a spring project. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to amend the beds, plant the bulbs in there, get it nice and fluffy with leaves so that there's a lot of air to protect it from our really cold winter. It's not going to decompose. The fungi and the bacteria are not really going to grow because it's going to be 40 below. It's going to be 20 below in like tonight. It's supposed to be minus 17 tonight, minus 17 degrees Celsius. But I have a lot to learn. So go fix my mistakes. I'm going to show you one of the things that I was told to try in my greenhouse to kind of start fixing an area that is really, really compacted. Over here, I had a succession of sunflowers that I harvested late into the fall here. And so there was a whole bunch of sunflowers planted here. I just stepped on them and knocked them over. But one of the practices with regenerative agriculture is they tend to like harvest stuff like this, and then they want it trampled down, and then you can add either compost or leaf mold or like a leaf mulch or whatever on it, allow it to decompose in place. And then you can, in the spring, I can add just a little bit of compost and plant seeds in there, or I could kind of move the stuff, like this stuff will be kind of decomposed. I can kind of move stuff to the side and sow seeds in there, and then it will come up. But they recommend there's lots of different ways of doing this, but one of the practices for what in my situation, it'll be warmer in here than it is outside. And so I'm going to try that. So I will just tromp all these down so they're laid over. I'm not cutting anything. I'm just going to leave it here. And then I will come over with some leaves and kind of sprinkle this all over. So see, these are perennials. I'm going to try to perennialize them. These here are yarrow. They were transplanted and they're already pushing new blooms. They've frozen a few times. They're done for this season. But I basically just stepped down all of the sunflowers and all of the cover crop that was growing underneath of them. Anything that had seeds, I pulled it off and removed it because I don't want any seeds sown in here. I did go ahead and remove some quackgrass that I don't want that in my garden. And then I dumped over, there was a bin that had compost in it, or 2 bins that had some compost in it that had some perlite. Oh, hello chickens. Can you see the chickens? Hi ladies. They want it here so badly because they can just smell all the yummy, delicious things. Anyway, I sprinkled some of that on here. Not that it was recommended to do so, but I just needed some place to put it, and I thought it would help because it's really, there's lots of aeration in there, compost, there's a lot of nutrition in there that might help begin the breaking down process. And then I'm going to top dress this with some leaves. So I'm leveling things out here, and I'm going to feed the microbiome in the soil that's already existing. I'm feeding some organic products, bone meal, feather meal, fish meal, and some worm castings. And the reason I'm doing that is because there are some existing microbes in the soil, and there are living roots in the soil. And so I wanted to apply that so it could start feeding the microbiology that is actually already existing in the soil. And here what I'm doing is I'm trying to remove as many of the invasive roots from quackgrass as I can, as well as the dahlias that I had planted here. I'm trying to move as many of their root systems as I can. The soil is really light and fluffy, but that's it. It's not retaining moisture. It's not really that healthy. It's really dry and there's no life in it. The dahlias pulled out really, really easy. And the reason I wanted to make sure I have a lot of the roots out of the dahlias is some of them did have gall, which I had overwintered some, and I had ordered some from places that other people are experiencing having lots of gall, and which is a disease that is caused from bacteria that is in the soil. I think it shows up when it's more anaerobic. So of course it's just leading to that issue that I've had in my soil, further proving that my soil is in distress and I need to add life to it. So what I've learned on this journey is that some plants need more of a bacterial-based microbiology in the soil that is aerobic. Bacteria is the good guys, and some plants require more of a fungi-based relationship. The roots of plants actually communicate with the microbiology that's in the soil, and there's a network. It's like a network in the soil that keeps everything healthy, and the microbiology actually feeds on the amendments, which then makes it available to the plants. And that's what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on rebuilding that network in the soil that will support the plants, and then I can go into a more organic process of growing and not have a disruption in the whole soil web that I have been creating here on the farm. So I absolutely cannot complain about how much this soil has actually grown for me this year. I cannot stress enough of how well that the soil had performed, but it could be better. I mean, the soil on my flower farm was producing an average about $1,000 per week of profit, and that was fantastic. And I can only imagine how good it would be if it was actually functioning and healthy. So I decided I'm going to give the chickens a little bit of a treat. So let's go give this to the chickens and they can enjoy some quack grass. They actually like it very much, especially on these cool days. Our guineas are doing really well. We have 11 of them that we're keeping over winter, and they've integrated really well into the coop with the chickens. The chickens don't really want to come outside. They don't like their feet being too cold, but they don't mind coming out for some grass. This is one of the main roosters that we kept in our flock. This is a blue laced red Wyandotte and a Wyandotte that we incubated this spring. The rest of the chickens are inside. I noticed there's a little bit of scaly leg on this hen. She's been treated. We just treated her. So if you did notice that, thank you for being observant. But we do have them. We treated all of our birds and cleaned the coop out. But this guy, he's enjoying some sunshine, and that's Monty. That's one of the horses I told you about earlier. She's doing very well. And yeah, kind of enjoying the moment. I love my office. Do you? Do you love your office? I love mine. Well, I managed to get one small project checked off my list for today, and I did dig some dahlias out, and I'll show you what else I did. But I just put some amendments in the soil, and I actually laid the leaves over top, not much, maybe like an inch, just kind of sprinkled it over top, not even an inch, just a light sprinkle over top. And I will come in here tomorrow and water everything. Tomorrow is supposed to be like around 0 degrees Celsius, so I'm going to wait to do that tomorrow. I also had some lilies that were in crates, and I pulled the crate, or pulled all of the lilies right out of the crate, and I just plunked them right on in here, and then I mulched over. I did amend the soil. I gave it a little bit of bone meal and fish meal and just a little bit of stuff to help with rooting in the spring. But they're dormant right now, and I just thought I would sprinkle some soil compost and then cover with leaves again, and these will hopefully perennialize here. And then I still have all of this to plant out, but I don't know what I'm going to be putting there yet. I still have to work on my flower farm mapping, which is a really big job. Because I have almost $2,000 worth of plugs coming in the beginning of March that need to be planted out in here, I really have to be mindful of how I'm interplanting different crops. Plus I want vegetables going here for my family, because one thing I really want to get going in here is to get out of the grocery store. I went to the grocery store today, and the sticker shock. I haven't been shopping at all because, like, for produce, because I've had the greenhouse all year, and so since last winter I haven't really had to buy produce because I've grown since early spring, and I could not believe the prices. And so to hear the predictions lately that the Canadian government is kind of tiptoeing around suggesting that there may be a recession, we may be seeing a recession in early 2023. I definitely want to make sure I have space in here for a lot of greens and a lot of vegetables that my family can enjoy. So there's a lot of planning I need to do. But so far, I did get the dahlias all dug up here, and I've been just pulling out a lot of the roots. The quackgrass roots are terrible. You have to pull them. They can go miles, those things. And so I want to pull them out. I definitely want this to be a no-till bed, but for now, I just need to kind of it's just a dead bed right now. So I need to just kind of get it cleaned out. I'm probably going to put garlic in this bed, and I'm not sure what else I'm going to put in here. We'll see what happens, but it's ready to go. And I'll just show you. I'll flip the camera around just so you can give it a better look. And there it is. It's all nice. I'm debating whether I'm going to put my water tank over here and just move my furnace over when the sun hits it, because it's black. When the sun hits it, it'll help hold heat as well. And that would be a really good corner for it to work as a battery for heat, because the sun comes across this way and it'll have heat on it, or the sun directly on it all day long, which I want that to help hold the heat. And then that heat radiates off, and then the fan can blow the warm air from that tank as it's holding that heat in. So that's kind of what I was thinking about doing. That's some of the suggestions I had from other greenhouse places. So we'll see. This is my first overwintering with stuff in it since we set this up last November. Like, we didn't set it up, the plastic, we just set the posts up last November. So I haven't actually worked in here during the winter time. This is my first year. So, but yeah, this will be really nice to have this all nice and tidied up in the spring. It should be nice and fluffy. But yeah, I just kind of put my lilies in here, and I'll be able to plant other things in around the lilies. So it'll kind of be like a cottagey kind of vibe through here. It's not ideal for a flower farm for harvesting, but for me to amend my soil and get things kind of functioning the way I want them to function, and to be able to retain water in here and to break through that compaction, I kind of need to do that. So I did also, I pulled the dahlias out of here. Some of them were really good. They produced a lot of tubers, and I am going to keep them, hopefully. But I am going to try to winter these over. So they're doing really well. I had cut this eucalyptus back, and it actually it grew again. Like, it grew out some more really quickly. So it's liking this cool temperature. I just turned the furnace on a couple days ago, so this is like, it's really growing quickly. So I'm going to cut it back tomorrow and give it a really good water in, and then I'm going to cover it with leaves, and I'm going to try to winter it over in here. So yeah, tomorrow it'll be kind of cleaning this stuff up in here. I'm probably going to leave the celery and cut it back and feed the chickens so they have some nice greens. And I'm not going to pull the roots or anything. I'm not going to do too much with this side other than bring in some compost and cover it up with leaves, just like that. But I will cut back the celery as we need it and hope it'll grow back. Hopefully we'll have some nicer days. And I can't get over these. These guys just want to grow. I haven't watered them. They froze. They just want to grow. So we will see. We'll see what happens. This spring, I had a very big outbreak, or this summer, I had a really big outbreak of tarnished plant bugs. And I had never dealt with that before, ever. And my soil was struggling. The reason why I had such an issue was because my plants were under stress. They didn't have the immunity to protect themselves as a normal, healthy, functioning plant would, that had the microbiology in the soil to have a healthy immunity. And I learned that, but the advice that was given, when you go to a place that focuses on agriculture, their advice was to use diatomaceous earth and broadcast it across the entire farm. And in fact, that is what some of the people doing agricultural practices here, the traditional commercial agricultural practices, is they literally broadcast diatomaceous earth all over their land before they start planting or working in their fields. And they do that to kill everything, all the bugs, all the worms, any soft body insect. And it's really, really devastating. When I literally learned this information, I couldn't believe that we've come to this point. I'm actively trying to regenerate my soil and bring back these worms, bring back the life to the soil. And the common practice in my area is to destroy everything. And it really bothers me. So I'm looking around all of the beautiful abundance in my garden, just making small changes. And there's things that are growing in here that shouldn't be growing in here because I've been focused on feeding the microbiology. And it's working. It's working way better than if I was to follow traditional practices. So my take on this year has been to not follow the common path, to learn and to understand what exactly I'm doing and how I'm impacting all the life that is around me, that surrounds me, that is growing and coexisting with my garden. I hope that inspires you to think about how you are impacting your soil and helps you begin being a better steward of your land. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today on my flower farm. I hope that you were able to take something away from today's video. Bye for now. Much love.